At the beginning of the movie, Captain Brody Torrance, played by Gerard Butler, is in Singapore and calls his daughter Daniela, played by Hayley Hecking, to let her know he'll be home in Honolulu soon to spend the holidays with her. Brody, a former RAF pilot, is in charge of Trailblazer Airlines Flight 119 and meets his co-pilot, Samuel Deli, played by Yosanan, who informs him they will be flying through a storm. Bonnie, played by Daniela Pineda, the head flight attendant, alerts Brody that Officer Shellback, played by Remy Adelic, needs to speak with him. The officer informs Brody that they are transporting a dangerous former French Foreign Legion soldier named Louis Gaspar, played by Mike Colter. During the pre-flight preparations, we are introduced to other passengers on the plane, including young social media influencers and a haughty businessman. As the plane takes off, Brody and Deli converse, with Brody sharing the news that his wife had passed away years before. When the plane reaches the South China Sea, it encounters severe turbulence while passing through the storm. The situation worsens, causing the plane to sustain damage, and Brody sustains a head injury in the chaos. One of the flight attendants is killed, and Shellback also dies after being thrown around as the plane starts to descend. Brody and Deli must take control of the aircraft without communication or radar, bringing it to a safer altitude. Recognizing that the damage is too extensive, they must perform an emergency landing. They spot an island and manage to make a rough landing. After the situation stabilizes, Brody instructs the passengers to exit the plane. He and Deli discover that they have landed on Holo Island. Meanwhile, in New York City, Trailblazers crisis manager Scarsdale, played by Tony Goldwyn, meets with the board of directors to locate the missing plane and passengers. Brody makes sure to keep Louis away from the other passengers and secured due to his violent history. He collaborates with Deli and Bonnie to keep the passengers calm and search for a way to call for help. Deli informs Brody that Holo is controlled by violent separatists, implying that the longer they remain there, the more danger they will face. The rebels, led by Datu Junmar, played by Evan Dane Taylor, become aware of the plane's crash landing and see an opportunity to benefit from the passengers. Meanwhile, Brody accompanies Louis into the forest to find a way to seek help. In New York City, Scarsdale and the board examine Brody's history file, which includes a video of an incident where Brody restrained a violent passenger in a chokehold until he lost consciousness after the passenger punched Brody when he tried to de-escalate a conflict. Scarsdale plans to dispatch a private military team to rescue everyone once they locate the plane since they are aware of the threat on the island. In Honolulu, Daniela's aunt informs her that her father's plane has crashed. Brody and Louis reach a tower, where Brody successfully contacts an agent from Trailblazers. Initially, the agent is skeptical because she has been receiving numerous hoax calls about the missing flight. Brody also speaks with Daniela over the phone before a rebel attacks him. Brody engages in a fight with the attacker and eventually kills him. While exploring the building, Brody and Louis discover that the rebels used the area to torture and film their captives to demand ransom money. Brody and Louis return to the plane, only to discover that Junmar and his men have already arrived. A Korean woman tries to escape, but a rebel shoots her, and her husband is gruesomely decapitated. The rebels take the remaining passengers hostage, while Brody and Louis hide. After the rebels leave, Brody and Louis overpower a lone rebel and discover that Junmar plans to take the hostages to a nearby village. Brody and Louis decide to follow the rebels to rescue the hostages. As Brody and Louis approach the village, Junmar forces the hostages to make a ransom video, stating their names and home countries. Meanwhile, the private military team arrives on the island, only to find the bodies of Shellback and the stewardess with a message from Brody. Brody and Louis manage to locate and free the hostages, killing several more rebels in the process. They put everyone on a bus and Brody stays behind to delay the rebels. Junmar and his men beat Brody and prepare to execute him, but the military team arrives and opens fire on the rebels. In the chaos, Junmar discovers his brother's body among the dead rebels, fueling his anger and desire for revenge. The entire group returns to the airplane and gets on board. There is a debate among the Trailblazers about whether Brody should be the one to fly the plane, given its severe damage and the risk it poses to everyone on board. Meanwhile, Lewis decides to join the military men in their fight against the rebels. However, after finding a bag of ransom money, he decides to stay on the island as he believes he has no future to go back to. After eliminating most of the rebels, Brody and Deli work together to try and get the damaged plane to take off. In a last-ditch effort, Junmar tries to fire an RPG at the plane, but Brody lifts the aircraft high enough to collide with Junmar, killing him with the impact of the wheels. With limited fuel, Brody then decides to make a landing at a nearby airstrip in Siasi. Despite facing some turbulence during the landing process, Brody successfully lands the plane, causing a wave of relief and cheers from everyone at the HQ. After everyone on board the plane has settled down, Brody takes a moment to call Daniela and inform her that he is coming home. Thanks for watching. Do the channel a favor by liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank you.